podcast. Bussin'.
Welcome to this.podcast, the dopest podcast experience in Denver. I'm your friendly host, Jay, joined by my friends. We got Co here.
Man, what we talking about?
And we got Uncle Damo.
Hi, my name is Uncle Damo.
You can find this.podcast at linktree/this.podcast, and we'll meet you where you're at. And we got video on YouTube. Shout out to the incredible Lawrence and Larimer for providing a beautiful space. You can find them at 3225 East Colfax Avenue, or you can go online at lawrenceandlarimer.com and get your latest lifestyle, fellas. That's where it happens at.
Yeah, lifestyle.
Let's get right into it, all right? We got a special guest, and this Denverite is an alum of Denver West High School and a graduate of Metro State. She's a news reporter for CBS 4. Let's welcome Marissa Armas.
Yes.
Look at you. I love your
to
going
the
Mars.
pod.
Roll that R.
Yeah. Thanks for being here.
Real talk.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sharp as a tack.
As a tag.
Oh, yes.
Sharp as a tack.
We are excited about this pod. We've been doing some behind the scenes, and Armas has been, Marissa, but yes, Armas has been spitting some hot fire back here.
I try, you know.
Yeah, so we're gonna get into that, but let's just talk about your upbringing, because you are a Denverite, and this is what this is all about, is showcasing Denver. And you grew up on the west side, right?
I did. So I grew up in Westwood, close to like Federal and Alameda. I guess you could say by St. Cajetan's, by San Cayetano. But I grew up there, you know, went to Knapp Elementary School, DPS kid, like all the way, Knapp, Kepner, then went to West over by Denver General, well, Denver Health now. And then, went to Metro. But I grew up here. My mom, I was actually raised by like a single mom. And I have two brothers, one sister. And it's been good. This has kind of been like a homecoming, I guess you could say, for me, because I hadn't lived here for 7 years. But it's been good. It's been a good experience. I mean, Denver is always going to be home no matter what.
Right.
And, you know, I think most of my family's here outside of even my immediate family. My cousins are here. My grandparents were here. And they were really the ones who like put down the roots here. My grandpa was actually from Guatemala. My dad is from El Salvador. But my mom, she kind of met him here. And he was kind of, I guess you could say, I met him for the first time when I was actually 16.
Got it.
In high school. But he was kind of like, you could say, he fled like the war over in El Salvador. And I don't want to say like he was a communist, but he was kind of very political. I mean, my dad was a very political person, very smart, but my mom and him met here, and my grandpa, he really played, I guess you could say, like the fatherly role in my life. And then my grandparents, they were just very, important to my life. But they've also passed, but they were really the ones to lay down the roots here for us in Denver.
That is.
And my mom actually went to East down the block. So my
Really?
grandparents.
Shout out to Angel.
Mom was an angel,
East
huh?
Angels. That's what my mom always says. She's like, East. And then my younger sibling did go to East as well. But my grandparents, they had property, over by 9 News, actually, like across the street. So I my grandparents lived there. We lived in Southwest Denver, but it was kind of nice because we would spend a lot of time with our grandparents and going back and forth. But we were actually, and I think still to this day, like the only, I guess you could say, POC on that block.
Gotcha.
So, but it's a pretty nice area. And I mean, as we know, real estate's crazy here. So, that's kind of where my grandparents were. So it's been a good experience. I think coming back, I mean, I hadn't, like I mentioned, lived here for 7 years, but coming back, it's different,
So where were you at in that 7 years?
Ooh, where wasn't I at, right? That's the question. Yeah. No, I was everywhere. I mean, when I left here.
I want to say New Mexico
New Mexico was the last spot. But when I left here, I left in 2014. That's when I decided that I wanted to go get my master's degree. And so I went to Columbia University. I actually applied and I actually got in.
Nice.
Yes. And I think for me, that was huge. Like I remember at the time I was working for this digital company owned by Phil Anschutz. So like one of the millionaires.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was called Examiner.com, but it was downtown in one of the skyscrapers.
I remember that.
Yeah, and I worked for that company. And that was, during that time, I mean, that's kind of when I realized, I want to go back and do more like video TV. And I said, well, what better place than to go to like the school of journalism, right? And so I applied to a couple of schools, ended up getting into Columbia, and I mean,
You all prestigious and shit.
I
Yeah.
try.
She
Oh
is.
man, but I'm in so much debt.
Sharp as
like,
a tack.
gosh,
No,
we talk
man.
about student loan forgiveness. But no, but it was. I mean, people ask me now, do you regret it because it was so expensive? And I mean, I do and I don't, and I don't for many reasons too, because I know for me and the upbringing and where I come from. I mean, one, I was like, even just college. I was the first one in my family to graduate from college, so first gen.
Got it.
Dope.
But also, I knew it was something I couldn't pass up. And I mean, how do you pass up an opportunity
can't.
like that, right?
can't.
And I feel like I always would have lived with that regret, of not moving to New York. But yeah, so I moved to New York. Long story short, I moved to New York in 2014. I was there for about a year and a half. And then I took my first TV job, which was actually in El Paso, Texas. And
That place
then-
is fun.
Yeah, El Paso's wild.
You
'Cause
been?
Juarez
I've
is-
been
Ooh,
several
you've been?
times.
Juarez too? You been to Juarez?
No, I didn't cross the border.
Okay, but Juarez
scared.
is
He
fun.
was scared.
No,
I hear
no.
good- yeah, I
I've
hear
crossed
it's
many
fun.
borders
You
in my
scared.
life. I didn't cross that
You
border.
was
Yeah,
scared, you was
it-
scared of that one.
It's kind of scary. I mean, you just never know, right?
No,
And
absolutely.
then the crime's
No,
picking back up in the
yeah,
area.
but-
when you're in college,
It's still like good
you're there
people.
to party.
No, I
and
was grown. It
you're
was
not
like
worried
four
about that.
or 5 years ago.
No, I'm talking about her.
But
Like,
I wasn't in
I don't give a
college.
shit about
I was
you.
already graduated. I had already graduated. But it's still kind of scary. You just never know, But I think the borderland too. The borderland is so beautiful, and there's so much beauty. I mean, it goes back to the way we look at certain communities, right? And then we look
Right.
at certain areas. I think when you look at border towns, and I've done a lot of border coverage too. When you look at border towns, I think people are very scared. I mean, and like, why would you move there? There's so much cartels and drugs.
Absolutely, because that's all you hear, right? Is the
Yeah.
stereotypes.
So,
Right. And
can
so
I-
there was so much beauty there too.
So I'm gonna tell you, there's a couple things that like mess me up with the border towns. Is El Paso, and like when you're driving from, let's say, Phoenix to San Diego, like you can literally see
Yep.
the fence, right?
Yep.
And there's people that are on the other side of this border, whatever, that will never see the other side of it. And it looks like glamorous. Like if you look, there's like in El Paso, they have like hills, and it looks nice. And like the other side is like flat, and I don't know. The disparity just bothered me.
And you
Got
can
it.
see the poverty, right? And I mean,
Yes,
I think
you
it's
can.
so surreal to every day have to drive through, I don't even remember what the highway was called, but I would take this highway to work, and every single day you'd see the border fence, the border wall, right? And Juarez, and the homes that were like made out of shacks, they're made out of just like steel.
Yeah.
And it was just so surreal, because then we're here living, I mean, obviously we have communities here who are struggling too, but even just in El Paso, you could just see the disparities just so easily from that border wall. So that was a pretty wild living experience to actually live and just see that and see people crossing the border. I mean, at
Absolutely.
night, sometimes like running. One time I remember, my ex-boyfriend at the time, well, boyfriend, but ex-boyfriend now, he had told me, he's like, no, he was like driving down the highway, and this guy was running, had just jumped the border wall, running across, and then he
Wow.
got hit, and then he died.
Oh wow.
Oh,
on
man.
the highway.
Were you ever able to interview actual border agents? To
Oh
get their
yeah,
perspective?
yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. And I can get into that's probably
That's pretty
did.
heavy.
Not only did I do it in El Paso, but then I did it in New Mexico. So I actually ran pretty much this series from the ground up, created this series, with one of my managers from the ground up, where we, under the Trump administration, covered border and immigration extensively for an entire year. So not only was I like talking to border agents every other day, but I went to the border once a month back in 2019, so right before the pandemic. And every day I'd cover different angles of border and immigration, from legal immigration to illegal immigration, to speaking to ranchers who lived in that area, to speaking to these families that were coming, with nothing from
Right.
Central America. And so, yeah.
Were there any conflict? Like, was there any internal conflict within those border patrol agents? Because, like,
Oh, yeah.
it's not a monolith. Like,
Right.
it's not like all border patrol agents are white. You know
Well,
what I mean?
so the thing is most border, but actually not most, but I'll say I want to say maybe 40-50% of border patrol agents, at least in New Mexico at the time, like, were Latino, right?
And that's what I'm saying.
Oh,
so
wow.
that was a story that I had done, like, Latino border patrol agents covering the border. And I did do that story, and one of the things agents kept telling me, I mean, you have to look at border towns too. Border towns are obviously going to be, because of Mexico's proximity, predominantly brown communities, right? San Diego,
Edinburgh, Texas.
The Rio Grande Valley, El Paso, they're all communities that are actually predominantly Hispanic. But when you ask these Border Patrol agents, so I guess back on that, I mean, opportunities. So when we look at those communities, they're predominantly Latinos, but you have to think too, what opportunities exist in terms of jobs and careers for that
in that
community,
place.
right? And so one of the things a
Same with
lot
Tucson.
of the Border Patrol, Border Patrol agents would tell me, they're like, well, yeah, when I started doing this, my family was maybe a little upset, but this is a job. I have a family to take care of.
No, I can provide,
and I have
right?
to, take away my own opinions to provide for my family, to provide for my kids, to put food on the table.
And they're
So I
actually
think,
really good jobs.
they're
really for that area.
Think about it. There's some of the best paying jobs in that area, right? So how are you going to turn down? I mean, I can't say like I support or not support that, but I
That's
guess
just
we
the
could say
reality of
it's
it.
the reality that for them it was a job. It was a way to put food on the table. And I think it was conflicting for a lot of them.
Yeah, so Marissa, it's like jails. Like, so for example, in Arizona, New Mexico, East Texas, it's jails, border towns,
Right.
highest paying jobs.
Yep, exactly.
Wow.
I mean, even here a couple of weeks ago, one of my colleagues, he said, hey, do you want to go like pretty much to like a carne asada with a friend? And I said, yeah.
Did you say carne asada?
Yeah, he
Best
was.
taco.
I'm in.
I mean,
like,
tacos, burritos.
yeah, like right, carne asada, any type
How
of
can you
cookout.
go wrong?
Invite
Yeah.
me,
You
let me know.
Cannot go wrong with carne asada.
Yeah, but he invited me, and this guy actually works at the ICE facility here in Aurora, and I've actually already done a couple stories with them. But he had actually only been in the U.S. For about 12 years, and like first language is Spanish.
Right.
And I was just like, how do you do it? He's like, pues, I have like, this is my job, and I kind of try to disassociate my feelings from the job. But he also said, being one of the Latinos here, I mean, here, obviously, we might see more black folks in those, or not black folks, white folks in those positions. I think there are some Latinos, but he said for him, at least at the Aurora ICE facility, I mean, he's one of very few agents that they actually confided in because some of them felt just more comfortable that they could talk to the Latino agent versus like a white agent. And so I know it's hard. It's a tough situation.
So let's move forward to like this. That's a great topic.
Yeah.
But you are excellent at the work that you do.
Thank
Hence you being on the show.
Absolutely.
And would love to tap into your why. Like, why do you do journalism? Why is it important to you?
Wow. Yeah, no, that's something that I am always so proud to share that story. I mean, as I mentioned to you guys, I grew up in Southwest Denver, West Denver, Westwood, predominantly Hispanic neighborhood. And I think for me, I got into journalism, and it's kind of a long-winded story. Initially, like in high school, we didn't actually have many resources similar to, Montbello, other schools. I mean, East, I think, does a little better. But we didn't have like any TV programs. We had a yearbook club and a newspaper club. And at that time, I liked that. I liked taking pictures. I mean, this is pre like selfie era, right? So we had the other digital cameras, and so I loved taking pictures. And I think I got really interested in yearbook club, and in high school I was like a huge fashionista, and I just loved.
You still are.
Prom queen?
Not really.
Yeah.
Prom queen?
Yes, sir.
You were.
I can spot him. I can
Here
spot
goes
him.
the horn. I knew the horn was coming. That damn dirty horn.
Princess junior year.
Oh,
Shout
prom
out.
queen and prom princess junior year.
Here comes the dirty horn.
Still living on my
Student
old
council.
accomplishments. Student council, yes. That
Nice.
was me. I was a
Read 'em.
cheerleader.
Freaking
Overachiever.
You know?
Oh,
Fun
shit.
fact, my mom was the principal at East.
Oh, no way.
And my dad taught at West actually for
Who's your
years.
dad?
Mr. Cain, but he was way before.
Okay,
He
okay.
left before you were there. So yeah.
But yeah, no, so I guess it started there. And so again, back being a huge fashionista. And so
That's
I
dope.
knew I wanted to go into like fashion journalism. I was like, well, and this is the crazy part. I tell people when I go speak to students at schools, like I didn't even know what the term journalism meant. I didn't know because like, I mean, and I can only speak for myself, but being a DPS kid, I mean, I don't necessarily think we're prepared for the real
No,
world, right?
absolutely,
Like,
absolutely.
And
That's
so
honest.
I didn't know what the term journalism meant. I mean, my mom watched the news a lot, and we read newspaper, but I didn't know that together all of that encompassed what journalism is, right? And so
Right.
I didn't really know that. And I remember just kind of going in, I had a friend saying, oh, I want to go into journalism. And I was like, well, what is that? And she was like, oh, like TV and like newspapers, magazines. I was like, hey, that sounds interesting. And I like fashion. Let's do that. Right.
Absolutely.
And so when I went to Metro, it really just started like I wanted to work in fashion magazines. And most of my, I guess, specialty was in magazines. And so I was learning how to do all this design. And it wasn't until my last year of undergrad that I took a TV class just on a whim. And they were kind of like, you're really good at this. And I was like, yeah, this isn't too bad. And this is when video, I think, barely started, picking up traction. I mean, Facebook
Absolutely.
had been out, I think, when I was was entering undergrad. And so I was like, oh man, there's like a spot for this.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until I really got my first, I worked like for some little niche papers like North Denver News, and I was interning at DPS. But then as I started like learning more, and I also studied abroad. That was a huge eye opener for me in Spain.
Yeah, Madrid.
Baller.
In Madrid, yeah. And I can go back to that experience and why that was so impactful, because I think it was a huge eye opener for me in terms of just my...
Is it access?
Yeah, well, that and I mean, I was going with a ton of rich kids from around the
Yo.
country, and I was like, not that, right? I didn't have money. I couldn't, I mean, that's a whole other story. But it wasn't until I started realizing that, man, there are real disparities. And I think as I started getting older and my younger, I want to say like my early 20s, I started realizing, well, there are a ton of disparities. Because when you grow up in the hood and stuff, like, you don't even really know you're poor, right?
You don't.
Like,
So
you
you're
don't
talking
really
about just
know.
between the hood and like middle class and
Right,
what other
right.
people
I've
are
never
exposed
been
to.
around people like
I
that,
got
right?
you.
And so it wasn't until I studied abroad and Metro's a pretty diverse campus, right?
Absolutely.
So
Very
I didn't really
diverse.
feel like
Out of place.
right? And so it wasn't until I studied abroad with all these very wealthy, predominantly white kids, and maybe a few sprinkled in, POC. And then like my first postgraduate job that I realized, oh my gosh, like there are real issues facing our community, right? And this
Right.
is in my early 20s. And I was just like, man, this is crazy. And so once I got that job at Examiner, that's when I realized, like, I loved fashion, but there was so much more in the world that we needed to be talking about.
Yeah,
So you
so
found
much
your
more.
true calling. It feels
Yeah.
like.
Yep.
All right.
So leaving and going to Madrid, what did you bring back? Not tangible things, but experiences. What type of experience did you bring back, and how did you integrate those experiences into
Love
your
it.
own neighborhood?
Yeah, well, gosh, I think too, so my roommate was actually from Virginia. She was pretty wealthy.
We're at in Virginia.
Roanoke. So Roanoke. But she came from a pretty middle class, upper class family. Every week she would kind of, call her parents, and her parents would put in like $1,000 in her account, $1,000
Oh,
every
geez.
week.
Okay.
And I only had, I think, like $5,000 for the entire like semester year, right?
You had
I
to
was
make
there
that
for
stretch.
yeah, so I had to make it stretch. So I remember like we'd get into conversations or little disputes. Like one time, I remember we went to this nightclub. It was called Capital, and it was like this huge, huge nightclub. And I left my jacket, and I remember her saying something like, just leave it, like just buy another one tomorrow. And I remember, and I was like I had drank a little, but I was like, no, I can't just leave my jacket. Like I don't have money to just come back and buy a new jacket tomorrow. Like I need to find this damn jacket. So
Okay.
I'm going to find it. If you need to leave, I'm finding my freaking jacket. But it was little things like that I realized that, I guess I realized that my upbringing was very different than a lot of my peers at the same age. And not only that, but they had a lot more access to me. So I think if anything, it gave me like the confidence also just own who I was, but also to challenge myself to be better and challenge the system, right? And how can we fix this? Like, this isn't fair. And I've worked just as hard.
Got it.
So why can't I also achieve or get the same things, right? And so for me, I guess, like intellectually, it was more of like, man, this is what's wrong. How are we going to fix that, right? And yeah, we're different, but like, I don't, and I tell people all the time, I mean, but it's not about me.
Right.
It needs to be about my kids. It needs to be about my like the next generations, right? So what can we do to better that system? And so that other kids not only have access to be able to study abroad, right? But to be able to feel comfortable in these spaces and to own who they are. Because I remember even just being there and like, kind of like people would be like, well, what do your parents do? And I would like be like, I don't know, my mom has like a clerical job. and they'd be like, well, my dad's a doctor. And I was like, oh, cool.
That's crazy because like it all goes back to when you said journalism, right? And you doing it in high school, not even knowing you were doing it, right? And I had the similar experience with engineering because I was like in a computer magnet and it was like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing with this. I just know I'm playing on computers.
Right.
But to your point, like some kids that have that access, their parents are setting them up like to do programming and hey, come check me out on the job. And this is, you know, what I do as an engineer and all that good stuff. But I want to focus on what you do today as far as CBS 4, because you are out there hardworking, see you constantly, and you could tell that you put a lot of effort and you care about what you do. So you're like news reporter in the field, and you've covered some like very important stories. And the most recent kind of like tragedy that we had was the Marshall Fire. And when I was watching that live, like you were all over it. Can you talk about maybe those experiences when you're going through those kind of things, and maybe the Marshall Fire specifically, but when you're like reporting the news and what makes you do that and just how you feel as you're reporting?
It's like you're in it, and how do you separate yourself?
Absolutely.
And let me go back to your question, though, because I never answered it. So sorry, because I'm so long-winded. I will talk to you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
So I guess the reason why I got into journalism and the reason why I do it is because of the way our communities are covered, right? And I think when we look at Montbello, when we look at my area, these news outlets usually only go out when it's to cover the shooting, right? But there's so much beauty in these communities too.
There is.
And I think that is what prompted me once I was at Examiner being like, no, there's so much more that we need to be talking about instead of just the trauma that our communities are experiencing.
Justin talked about that a lot.
Yeah. And so I guess to answer your question, it's just realizing that there's so much more. And we have to understand too that these companies and corporations, they're built in a way that has, at a point exploit especially communities of color for their trauma. And we have to go back if we want to reconcile and fix and gain that trust from these communities. We need to go back and also cover the
just like the police.
And exactly. So that's
same thing.
that. But when I am
well, let's stay there because I like that. No, you're good. Let's stay there. So let's talk about the progress that has been made in the newsroom and how things are getting more diverse. And if you could talk about that experience just within the workplace and how you navigate that.
Gosh. So I will tell you that has actually been one of the hardest things for me as being in the industry as a woman of color. And I'm not Black, right? So I can't even imagine what it is like for our Black folks and what they've had to deal with, right? But being a woman of color has been one of the most challenging things. And while we have made progress, I know we were talking earlier, we have made progress. We are seeing Black and brown faces on the screen. Representation is so much more than just bringing in a Latina reporter or a Black reporter, right? You have to cover these communities with intention, and you have to intentionally invest in wanting to cover these communities, not only for their trauma, but also for the beauty and the good that they bring to the community too. And I think have we made strides? Yes. And when we look at what happened with George Floyd in that movement, that was a moment where everyone's like, okay, we're going to bring in Black folks, we're going to bring in Latinos, and that's great and all, but are you doing it because it's trendy, or are you really doing it because
you want to make a change?
Exactly, right. Gotcha. And so for me, while there have been changes, for me, it's not enough. And I think so many journalists of color are leaving the industry because it's not changing fast enough for us. And they want us, we want to be diverse to an extent until you're too much, right? And in my career, I mean, surprisingly, I've already gotten a lot of stuff. I'm too Latina, right? If I wear too much red lipstick, my last station, I actually got told I couldn't wear red lipstick anymore.
Wait, why?
Because of that?
Well, not because I was Latina, but I think too, we have to look at beauty standards, right? Especially when we look at Black women. For so long, they were telling Black women, you couldn't wear your hair like that.
Natural.
And now all of a sudden, Black women are able to, and good for them. They deserve that. But that's the thing is, they're always trying to put, not everybody, not this station. I will be cautious with that. It's not. This station has actually been a lot more understanding than past experiences I've had. But we also have to understand that there is a cookie cutter image when we look at TV, right? And especially when we look at women. And that's something I'm very proud of. I mean, I'm not super skinny, and I'm not trying to be super skinny, and I'm not super blanquita. When we even look at Spanish news, Univision and Telemundo, they also hire predominantly white-looking Latinos. Why? Well, because they fit that Eurocentric image of what beauty standards are, right?
So what you're saying there is that colorism
Oh, yeah.
Exists
Of
in
course.
all races,
Of
like
course.
any minority race is like the closer you are to that Eurocentric or whiteness.
I personally
then,
still think that exists. I think that companies are getting a little better about it, but
Okay.
I think it's still out there, and I think it's something we still have to pay attention to,
So,
right?
I love that, but just want to anchor on who are you? Like, what are you? Like, you talked a little bit about what's not showing up in the industry, but who are you? Because obviously you have the skills. Obviously you have the wherewithal. Obviously, like, we could name off all the things that you have that make you you. What do you have that makes you successful?
I think what I have that makes me successful or that's been successful in my career, and I
Yeah.
still don't think everybody is executing that because everyone is trying to fit a mold in this industry, is that I'm authentic. And I'm never going to not be authentic to who I am.
Yeah.
Hey! And I think too, I love it. I love it. This is the type of hype I need. No, and I think it's that. And I mean, people in this industry have referred to me as like an indigenous Latina, which I obviously have indigenous roots, but I also never want to take away from our
Expand on that.
indigenous folks.
Like, you gotta go there.
yeah.
What
So
does
what do
that
you mean
mean?
by indigenous
Yeah.
roots?
So people, I think, have told me in this industry, yeah, but you're like an indigenous looking Latina.
But what does
And I'm
that
like,
mean?
What does that mean? Right? I'm like, well, what does that mean? And they've told me, like, oh, well, the cheekbones, and you're shorter, and you're
Got
like
it.
a little darker, or like you have the darker features. So I'm not, because again, it goes back to the Eurocentric beauty standards,
Sure.
right? Because I'm not super skinny. I don't have like a super thin nose. You know, my nose is a little wider. Like, you know, so things like that I think people have associated me more with that. Obviously, a lot of Latinos, we are mestizo, which is a mix, right? So, I mean, do I undoubtedly have indigenous roots? Of course. You know, my family is
Guatemala.
Mayan,
Yeah.
right? So likely Mayan roots. My
Sure.
grandma was actually born in Folsom, New Mexico, and so they say maybe some Apache. But we also do have Spanish roots, right? And then I do have Latina friends who are white Latinas, who look white and are white passing, right? And so I think for me, I'm very proud to be who I am and to look how I do look. But I think when you say even, you know, you have this, you have this, you have this, I question the same thing. Then why, you know, I tell my friends, you know, I eventually would like to do more national work on a national level, but I also believe that if I don't get there, why am I not getting there?
No,
then,
but
right?
you are going to get there.
Yeah.
So it's all about your perspective. And I remember we were talking on another show about manifestation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in the big picture, man, in terms of your age and what you've done a lot, and we are all our worst critics.
Right.
You know what I mean? However, you know, what Damon is telling you, accept it.
Right.
And know that, you know, but this is coming from someone who it's coming from the world, right? So this is the world giving you positive feedback. Now it's up for you to receive that and then manifest that into that national anchor role.
That positive energy, right?
That chair, that national anchor chair that's sitting there waiting for you at MSNBC, Fox News, CNN, wherever. But I think for me is, as a Latina, how do you, or woman of color, right, in this new space, you can wear a dress that on someone else may look totally different. Right.
Yep.
But then you can get critiqued from the outside world, you know what I mean, based off of just how you're built. So how do you navigate that? How is that accepted in this profession? Right. And are producers cognizant of that? Are they aware to say, like, look, she can have on the same dress, I can have on the same dress. Sorry, this dress is going to highlight my curves.
Right.
Way different from it's going to highlight her curves. But when it's seen from the outside world, it looks totally different.
Yeah. Well, and thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I think on that first note that you mentioned, I mean, I do acknowledge that, but I think we also have to be cognizant of why those are still challenges in the industry, right? Because who's calling the shots up top? Yep. I mean, we could make changes at the bottom, right? But the changes really need to happen up top, right? And when we look at the issue, I mean, I've gotten that a lot. I mean, my last station, I actually used to anchor as well there. And I would get a lot of flack for the things I would wear because I was a little curvier. And so that was always an issue. And I think, you know, here I've been more in the field, and with the pandemic, I don't even really wear dresses here too much. But yeah, I think that's something that is still an issue, because then you're talked to. You look too voluptuous. It's too revealing, right? And well, no one would outright, because, you know, discrimination with corporations, no one would outright say,
but there's those microaggressions.
There's hella microaggressions.
Exactly. I mean, one time it was like, oh, well, that's like more of a club dress, so don't wear it anymore. And I was like, oh.
Like what club?
No.
Like what club?
I was like, whose club?
211?
Right.
5 degrees?
Oh, gosh, 5 degrees. I
Purple
remember that
martini.
You remember that one?
5
Okay.
degrees.
No, you
I
don't.
remember martini.
Yeah.
I was getting in with some fake IDs, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Maybe.
Shout out.
But no, it's still a thing. I mean, even, you know, my accent, I've been talked to about. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't really think I have an accent, but apparently I do. And so I've been talked to about my accent, and I don't know if it's the way I maybe say, you know, words in Spanish that are proper, you know, properly saying them in Spanish, but I've been talked to about that. I mean, I've been talked to a couple things.
Spanish.
And usually the way I combat it, I'll say real quick, is that sometimes I just go on Twitter and I start throwing shade, or I'll screenshot the things.
Got it.
I'll type up a paragraph on Instagram, like,
That's kind of your outlet?
Well, yeah. Well, yeah. And I mean, even the Armas thing. So back in New Mexico, and New Mexico's an interesting place because I did live there for almost 3 years, but New Mexico's an interesting place because it was Mexico at one point, and there is a lot of Spanish influence. But there's also, that was Mexico, right? And so, but even when we look at the Latino community, there are very different ways on how Latinos describe themselves. Some might say Latina, some might say Hispanic, some might say Chicano. Latinx, right? Yeah. And so one of the things that they hated there is that I would always say Armas. And I mean, we also have to look at TV too, right? TV tends to be, in my opinion, at least English. Well, it depends where you are, right? But I think, you know, a lot of the Hispanic community, or historically, they were looking at like Spanish language news.
Yeah.
Got it.
But I think, you know, when you're trying to bring in your Latinidad, your Latina-ness into like a white space, or a predominant or a historically white space, people don't like that, right? So people would hate the way I would say Armas, and they would say, why do you have to say your name like that? And I'd be, because that's the proper way to say it.
And that's nuts, because I imagine if it was a Euro language, like if you came in, like if you were speaking with a British accent,
right,
that would be totally accepted. Like nobody would say, hey, you know, bring the tone back on your accent or something like that, because nobody can hear you. But the fact that it's Latina, it's like you get combat, right?
Yes,
and you get pushback, and that's crazy. That's crazy to hear that.
There was a video that was like, I think it was on TikTok or something, and it was a girl saying like, honey, like if they can say charcuterie board, like they can learn how to say your name, right? And I actually have another friend who's Haitian.
That's a hard word to say.
I know,
charcuterie
right?
board.
I have another friend who's Haitian. I mean, her first name, she changed it to so that to make it easier on people. And and I know a lot of people who have. I know another guy who, well, in this one, I mean, this is a little different, but when he moved to a more like Latino market, he used his mom's last name versus his dad's because it was more Latino. So people are also doing that, where if they know they could be a little more marketable using certain names. They will.
Yeah.
So
to your favor.
So making just a quick left turn.
Yeah.
Wait, but can I ask something real quick? So you were talking about Mexico, and I forgot how you phrased it, but me and the family have been going to Mexico a lot, and
love Mexico.
Be careful! I caught COVID there 2 months ago. I was like good for 2 years, and then
I saw that. I'm going there in a month exactly.
Are you?
Mask.
Yeah, I'm going to Cabo.
Oh, hey.
Oh, yeah. That Covito waiting on you.
I'm gonna be
Shots at,
wide
though.
open.
But that Covito waiting on you.
I got COVID booster number 4.
That boy pin cushion.
Yeah.
Well,
That BA2 ain't gonna get me.
That boy pin cushion.
BA2 is that the?
That's the next strand.
Oh, got it.
Oh, it is.
I need to keep up. There's so
Yeah.
many now.
Yeah, there is. My bad.
I was gonna ask the influence,
So you were talking about Mexico.
Eurocentric influence in
Yeah.
Mexico. It was baffling to me because, here in the States, and correct me if I'm wrong or if I'm saying anything that sounds nuts, but Latino, Hispanic are really deeply proud, always celebrating their culture, all that good stuff. And bear with me for a second, I'm sorry. But what was interesting when I went to Mexico, I went to like a festival or more like a show.
Yeah.
And it was crazy to see kind of like how they, in artistic form, kind of portrayed the history of Mexico. And talking about, the war with Spain coming over and conquering and, all that with the Mayan Aztecs and how they kind of blended together. But what was so crazy is like how they have adapted the Eurocentric culture
Right.
so much in the motherland for you, or
That's interesting.
I won't say the motherland, that was stupid, but just in a predominantly Hispanic, Latina culture is like they were kind of almost celebrating that of like, we are now taking this Eurocentric view of like religion, like all these things. And it's like very highly celebrated where I would think it would be the opposite of like, no, we want to get back to like our heritage of like Aztec, Mayan and things like that. So,
Well, I think too, we have to also acknowledge that, for many of our communities,
Yeah.
right, like that was all forced upon us, right, for so many years. And I think the same thing goes for Mexico, Central America, Guatemala. That was all forced on us, right? Like even Catholicism was forced on
Absolutely.
us, right? I grew up Catholic, and even, Semana Santa just passed, a Holy Week, but in Guatemala, it's a huge celebration. But when we look at even Catholicism, Catholicism was a religion that, just like Christianity, it was kind of
Absolutely.
forced on everyone, right? And so a lot of those indigenous practices, they were frowned down upon, just like the Black community, right? And so
yeah.
I think that is where a lot of that comes from. But I think too, where a lot of us are at that age, at that point in the country, well, at least in the United States, I think other countries are a little different because race and class dynamics are still different.
Yeah.
But when we look at what's happening here, we're at that point where Black folks, Latinos, we're starting to own that, right? We're starting to own who we are. And it's not that we didn't, but I think for a long time, so many of us were forced to assimilate and forced to be that way and to be more appealing to, I guess you could say, like white America. But now, like, that time is done. Like, people are done and they're gonna be who they're gonna be. And I think when we look, because even when we look back at Bad Bunny, how we were talking about earlier, a lot of my friends say, well, yeah, but he's from a different country. And I get it. A lot of those countries aren't where we're at. When we're looking at race and class issues, they're not there yet, right? Here in the United States, we do have that freedom to be able to discuss those issues. But I think part of it is that now we're owning that again. A lot of our people.
And that was what was so fascinating is like, Black and brown have the same similar stories.
Right.
You know what I mean? Of like that oppression.
Yeah.
It comes in different forms, of course, but just to see that, I was like, damn, I could relate to that. And to see the history of it play out in this play, it was just like, damn, that feels like a lot like what Black people are going through. So it's like, it was cool to see that.
Man, we're all connected. You know what I mean? Like, for example, you find pyramids. You got Mayan pyramids, and then you got pyramids in Egypt. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
These are places that are on two totally different sides of the world. You know, and kind of getting to that Eurocentric view. Like, I've been to Mexico once, right? And you know what sucks is that I got a boy. My boy, he goes off the grid, right? When he goes to Mexico, he goes to Mexico, right? When I go,
you're like on the resort.
I'm like on the resort. I'm like taking the tourism tours, right? So naturally, those type of entertainments are going to be more Eurocentric, more palatable for us as tourists take. You know what I mean? Like for example, what's the Isla Mujeres?
Yeah.
Where everybody's kicking it now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
My boy was going there 15 years ago. He was like, "Man, I'm going to this spot called Isla Mujeres.
That shit cracks.
It's
Yeah,
off.
it
But check this out. It's this little quiet island off the coast. I'm going there to get my mind right. It's just quiet little sea town.
Not anymore.
Ain't nothing quiet about that place.
No, but I'm saying this is literally 15.
Right.
This is literally 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
And now it's turned into this huge
Tourist spot.
Yeah,
right?
that's exactly what it is.
So a left turn, right? I'm just curious, well, shit, you're like a celebrity.
I wish. No.
So
Nah,
We're
Denver-
that celebrity
yeah.
money though.
nah. So my question is, what is the groupie life like?
Oh,
As a news anchor,
What's
here
the
in
thirst
Denver.
trap like?
Yeah, like
we're
yo,
calling
like,
them. We're
Hey,
calling them
Courtney.
all out. I don't
Hey,
know. Can we
so
go through the
just
DMs
real quick,
Hey.
Most of the time I push Courtney like, dude, don't. That was a great question.
yeah, like what is it like, man? You gotta,
It's
you have the
okay.
thirst trap and the hate trap.
Ooh, both,
Ooh.
yes. But I think the thirst trap is worse.
Whoa.
And it's
Ooh.
gotten so much worse over like the last 3 years for me, because I mean, on Instagram, I have an okay following, it's like 10,000.
Okay.
Okay.
Same thing on
Okay, I have
Facebook,
20,000
People
followers. I'm okay.
dream of
Yeah,
that kind of following.
But I think too, it's gotten a little worse over the years, unfortunately. And I think if anything, it has kind of opened my eyes to, and no offense to the men here.
no,
no,
But I
say
think
it.
Tell the truth.
it's kind of opened my eyes that we need to educate our men more, right? Right? Not more.
Okay, let's
better.
dig in. So,
Worst pickup line.
Because no. Some of the things
Outside of the
so
pictures.
Wait, hold on.
vulgar.
Let her finish it. Like,
Some
how
of
do
the
you
things-
educate us?
But the thing is I mean, we have to look at like society, right? I mean, obviously I think parenting is huge,
Yeah.
right?
Sure.
But I think we have to look at society, right? And the way that we have taught men versus how we teach women.
Sure.
We teach women don't wear a short skirt instead of teaching a man
Respect.
to respect, right? And don't look at how short her skirt is, right? Like,
Right.
And I think we have to look at the way that we've taught our men versus how we've taught our women, right? And so I think for me, I mean, the thirst trap is real, and I get so many vulgar messages, and I've made a couple of videos on it. I think, but I want to make more. I've like screenshotted so many because I think it's a conversation, and I think we need to do better. And a couple of days ago, one of my friends was like, "Hey, like how much, like what percentage of your followers are men?"
I bet it's like,
And it was like almost 80%
I
of my
bet.
followers were
I bet.
men,
I
right?
bet.
And I get just really nasty things. And don't get me wrong, I think it's I feel so honored to have so much support. But I think we have to do it in a respectful manner, right? And we can't just be talking about my breast size or how I look and that's kind of what I get a lot of the times.
Yeah,
And
but who's the guy from West High School who is like, yo, can we go out on a date?
Oh my
oh
God.
yeah,
Do you remember me from what?
Back in the
2000?
day.
What had happened
2000?
was
don't call it
But
out.
you know
Don't call
what?
it
I
out.
won't. But they kind of, one of them recently went the extra mile and emailed me at my work email, and I was like, okay.
Hey, that
And I was
boy-
like, no, I
Oh,
can't.
persistent.
wide
Yes.
open.
But all of a sudden, Marissa's back in town, and everyone's like, "Oh, you're so fine, you're so hot. Let's go out." And I'm like,
Yeah.
no.
Well, you are
Marissa,
attractive.
all right,
You
let's-
are attractive.
Let's bottom line. You are an attractive woman.
Thank you.
And you deserve a lot of attention.
Respectfully,
Yeah,
of course.
respectful
Respectfully,
attention. But how do you curve the nonsense?
Ooh, I just don't be replying. I'm like, I
So-
just don't reply. Or if it's really vulgar and inappropriate, I mean, usually what I do is I will sometimes screenshot it and be like, I did this
Blast.
recently. I think like, I blast them
Yeah,
and I'm
absolutely.
like, you have a mother. I'm sure you have a mother, sister, daughter, aunt, something. Like, would you talk to them like that? Because that's what I think we need to be asking. Like, would you ever talk to the women in your life who are your loved ones like that? Like, it's just, for me, it's overboard, right? And I think
Agree.
it's one thing to say like,
Yeah.
oh, you're a beautiful woman and you're great at your work, but it's like, like, not to sound like I have a big head, but like, I get that I'm pretty, but like, acknowledge my work. Go
Absolutely.
acknowledge my story.
Your work
I mean,
is
we're
great,
so
too.
much more, and that's the thing.
At
as
least
women,
ease into it. Give me a compliment about my
Right.
achievements. Something.
Right. And I think as women, you know, we've been in society. I mean, when you look at the role of the woman, it's changed, right? And so I think historically women were like these trophy wives for men. And that was like a huge accomplishment, was to get and marry a woman. And that's great. But like, women are
out there doing the
their
work.
own thing now.
Yeah,
you
they
know?
doing
And
the
so-
work.
And a lot of us, I mean, don't necessarily need men to survive or to thrive. And I mean,
From a financial,
he's coming from it, he's coming
from it.
financial
Timeout.
standpoint.
I'm a huge feminist, by the way,
No,
too.
be a feminist.
So am I.
No, I have $3 for context.
Yeah.
So what's that mean?
No, just
Bear with you.
in order. I'm not going to say in order. There's an equation to having a financial fulfilling life. You have a great career.
Yeah.
I think that's like an edge case. But the majority,
Wait. What do you mean is an edge case?
he asked me that too.
What's an edge case?
Yeah, an edge case is like when you look at a bell curve.
No, I know what edge case is, but in her case, why are you saying
She's an
Like an
edge case.
outlier.
She's an
Outlier.
outlier.
Right.
okay?
You're an outlier.
Like there's
The-
not a lot of successful women out there.
No, there's a lot of successful women
He's
out
on
there.
that
However,
tightrope. Boy, that
No,
guy-
however-
when you say edge case,
However-
wait. When you say
However-
edge
On
case,
TikTok.
that don't sound
No.
like.
however, the most successful marriages come from teamwork.
They do. But
Oh,
but I
yeah,
think
absolutely.
too, maybe for me, I
Oh,
mean,
so now you backpedaling.
No, I'm not. I'm saying. I think what she was saying is
That
that
she's
she
a
doesn't
movement.
have to depend.
She doesn't
on it.
have to,
Right.
but
She's a
just think.
movement by
No,
herself.
so,
yeah.
so
Thank
you.
imagine a
Thank you.
world.
Yes.
Imagine a world as if you had somebody that was just successful as you, that's on the same page as you, that's doing not the same things as you.
right,
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's fulfilling.
right.
Y'all might be saying the same thing.
All right,
Yeah,
I
and
just
and
think
and
she's
don't get
saying.
me wrong. Go
ahead.
for it.
No. I'll let you
No,
explain.
go
you.
for it.
No. Go ahead.
This is your
I
show.
think you-
Don't
yeah.
get me wrong. Like, I think, like, do I think I need a man to have a fulfilling life? I don't.
No.
Would it be nice? Yeah, it would. But I think too, I'm also at that point where I've told my mom, my mom's a Latina mom too. Like, when are you
Where are
gonna
my
have kids?
kids?
Like,
Where are
are
my
you having
grandkids?
kids? And it's
Yeah.
different when your daughter has kids. You should have kids. She's at that point. But I think too, for me, I mean, I can't have a kid without having to be married. You know, I can't, and that's something
Good.
I thought about seriously. Is especially as I've entered my 30s, just do I want to freeze my eggs? Do I want to have a kid independently?
Oh, wow.
Because I think too, I mean, I don't know about, I can't speak for everybody, but for myself, it's been really hard to find a successful man of color who can meet me where I'm at.
You know what's funny? It's because Jennifer Johnson.
And if they are there,
She
they're all
came in.
gone. So
Hey, no,
I'm
Jennifer Johnson came in here and was like, "Shit,
Yeah.
this shit is easy."
like, really?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think too. I mean, don't get me. I think
You're a
lot
public
of them-
figure, though.
Yeah. Well, and
That's different.
that is like
That's a
another
different
layer,
element.
right? And
Yeah.
I
They
have
take
a lot
a
of
lot into account.
Yeah, and a lot of my friends, they do online dating, or they have met people via like online dating. And for me, the one time I tried it, it was just like, "Oh, you're that news lady. You're the news lady." And I was
news
like, "Yeah, I'm
lady.
done. I can't.
He's
I
just
can't
like,
do
I
it."
can't deal with this.
He's like, and I sent you a DM earlier.
But no, and a lot comes with that because, as a news, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but as a news reporter or anchor, it's like you don't know where you'll be at, right? Like if you
Exactly.
have those ambitions, it's like, hey, I might be moving to DC. I might go into
Right.
Chicago.
This
or
train
something
ain't
like that.
stopping, brother.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing that's hard too, is because of this career, you do move so much and you are willing to uproot your life. So it's just been really hard to settle down with someone. But I think, too, I mean, of course, I think it'd be, I would love that to happen. But I think, too, for me, it's not my end all be all. It's not,
It's not
and I
priority.
mean, I recently had this conversation with one of my good friends. I mean, I think we give women, we have these huge parties for women who are getting married. And, we have bachelorette parties, bridal showers, and I'm so happy for all my friends who've been able to accomplish that. But why aren't we celebrating the other successes of women as well, right? When they are getting master's degrees, when they do get promoted to a new job. And I just think when we look historically at women and the role of women, I mean, that's always been something that has been pushed, like you are successful if you can get married. But I personally just think that has changed, right? Or it's different for me.
No,
and I don't
agree.
think that's the message that we should be sending young women, is that like, oh, if you get married, that is success, right? And we all have different definitions of success. Don't get me wrong.
No, and I'm trying to be cognizant of that. And, you know, Damo's a good role model in that because he has had 3 girls. And it's the little small things of like, you know, when a boy is being aggressive, oh, he's being a strong leader. When it's a girl, oh, you're being bossy or sassy or something like that. So, you know, I've been guilty of that, you know, prior to me having girls. And it's my daughter. I don't have girls, just my daughter. And change that narrative of like, no, you be aggressive. You be that leader. Be assertive. Yeah, go let your your voice be heard and all that stuff.
I thought my whole life is like, oh, Marissa's so bossy, Marissa's so this, but it's like,
be a boss.
No, I'm here to make I'm here to make change.
You can tell
we gotta go. We gotta move. Let's go.
Your personality irks assertiveness in a great way.
I hope
Absolutely.
so.
It does.
I hope so.
It does. So, question for you.
Yes.
What do you have? Like, what questions you have for us? You're a journalist, and I know you have questions for us.
Wait,
Let's come back to that one.
Yeah, because I think Co has some.
Oh, my bad.
Let's come back to that one. But so let's just give a cheat code.
Oh,
A small little cheat code for Marissa.
Yeah.
Right? What is your ideal date? Like, paint the picture.
Gosh, that's a toughie.
is it breakfast?
No.
Because you're busy, and the reason I ask this question, you're a busy woman.
Yeah.
You're a public figure. You've probably seen, you know, a wide range of guys sitting in a certain economic class. You know what I mean? So, like, what is what will, don't throw the wow, what will wow you, but throw, like, paint a picture of a nice date.
Well, for me, I think too, it's never, I mean, I've never been someone like I have a dream date. It's really, can you meet me intellectually? And that's the biggest thing. I mean, I have to, I think, be with someone who's either smarter than me or who can teach me something. Okay. And that's been a huge challenge because I think, I mean, I'm a talker if you can't tell. But I just, for me, I don't care where we go. You could take me to McDonald's, but if you can wow my mind, then I'm probably gonna be like, oh my God, you know.
That's what McDonald's does.
Would you be happy? So would you be happy
but
with
a
front?
and I think a lot of people think too, I must be like super materialistic, and I'm just not. Like, I'm a very simple girl. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, take me somewhere nice, of course, but.
Right.
You know, at the same time, like, I think it's, for me, it's all about conversation. It's all about that rapport.
You were totally cool with Chinese food in Jeopardy.
Yeah, or Chinese food at a park. You know what I mean? Like, take me on a picnic.
Alex
let's
Trebek.
watch a cool show.
And I can
I mean,
answer
I don't really
all
like
of the
Jeopardy.
I can
but
answer all the Jeopardy questions.
Hey, so what's interesting is, let me give you the difference.
R.I.P. to Alex Trebek.
Yeah, that was
I
good.
know.
So one of the things that a common denominator for me is, so for context, I always say that.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm pretty smart.
Yeah.
Depends who you ask.
It depends on who you ask. But
that's
the
a fact.
women that I've been with, including my wife, are smarter than me.
Yeah.
So you saying, hey, I need somebody that's smarter than me, makes me feel like, damn, I got to get smarter.
Well, not even just smarter, but I think someone who could teach me something, right? I mean, because of the industry I'm in and just my curiosity in general, I mean, a lot of people will say, like, what do you watch? And I'm like, documentaries. Like, I am that person. Like, I don't really watch a lot of TV shows. I mean, I have, like, my one committed show, which is, like, Grey's Anatomy, that I've watched for years. But
Are you
outside
still
of
watching that?
I am still watching that.
God, they're in season,
Shout out
like,
to Shonda
what?
Rhimes.
20. They gotta be
Season
20,
like
18, 20. Yeah, got it.
Honestly, it's just someone who could teach me something, right? And I think too, there's just so many things going on in our world, right? And
That's dope.
If you can talk to me about these things that matter, that's just it's a different
That aren't
story.
newsworthy, that are
That what's happening in our
What's happening.
communities,
Got
right?
it.
I mean,
That's
I think
great.
for
That's
me,
great.
that's the winner. So it doesn't even really mean, I guess you have to be smarter than me, but teach me something. I
Got
don't
it.
Let's
know.
have some depth.
So that's something because,
That's
I feel like you're a sponge of just information. Anybody in that profession is just like, getting
Let
it from
me
all
know. Tell me
angles. I need to
everything.
know
Yes.
everything
But you
that's
have to
going
be
on.
curious. So what she said your love of curiosity. You
Yeah.
have to
I
be
love it.
curious to
So
be
speaking of that,
wait, what
Real
happened
quick.
to me? Go.
for
Just leave me
context,
out.
you just had the for context,
no,
didn't you?
man, just leave me
You
out.
just asked the question.
No, but
I know, man.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I love it.
This is gonna be a good one though. So speaking of that, because it seems like you are a journalist and Twitter.
Yeah.
The news with Twitter with Elon
That's
buying it out,
Jay.
and what do you think the changes are going to be made in the effects of Elon going to be owning Twitter?
Well, I think, I mean, obviously everyone's talking about freedom of speech, right? And
Right.
what that means. But I think, too, we also have to look at most of the social media sites that we have. They are already owned by billionaires, right? The Washington Post, I think Jeff Bezos, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of these organizations, whether it's gotten as much hype as the Elon Musk stuff, they're already owned by billionaires, right? All of these corporations are ran by billionaires. And
Right.
so I don't necessarily think it will change much. I mean, I think Elon Musk is interesting because of his relation to historically, I guess you could say the Trump administration and just like more right-leaning politics
Got it.
is interesting. But I do think that, or I'd hope that it doesn't get that far. But we also have to recognize that most of these social media sites, I mean, they're all owned by, I mean,
know, you
Billionaires
make a
are
great
literally-
point.
Hey, I think
too,
it's going to
right?
get
Yeah.
really
Instagram,
interesting.
Yeah.
It is. But I think, too, I mean, it's kind of already happening, right? And when we look at media and we look at the shifts that media's taken, I mean, some could say it's problematic to an extent, but that's where I think places like local news do become a lot more critical,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
more important to communities.
But
they're
I think with-
buying their world, they're buying information and they're buying
Data.
access.
Oh, they're buying data.
So when you buy Twitter, when you own Twitter, you own Facebook, you
No,
own
you don't.
Instagram.
Well, they're
No, you don't.
monopolizing
No, he
it.
these are
doesn't say you
billionaires.
own all
These
of
are
them. But you're just
billionaires.
saying.
These are a small group of people who are owning the major pillars of the world right now.
Right.
Information, access. So
And
you
data.
have Jeff Bezos, data, access. You have Elon Musk, information. You have Mark Zuckerberg, information.
I agree, and I agree.
Those are four. Those are what, 3 or 4 people I named.
Yep.
Absolutely.
people
That own all of them.
that own
Yep.
all of this shit.
No,
even
absolutely.
even the
That's-
networks, right?
That's a lot of power.
Yep.
But
No,
you didn't talk
absolutely.
about TikTok.
But
China.
shit.
China
Yeah,
owns
it's
that.
all about China.
So we got China. So, but these people are billionaires. So the whole point of what I'm saying is, you have
Oh,
these
it's-
billionaires that
Got
own,
it.
that basically have bought up the world based
Sure.
off the companies that they own.
Yeah. So
And how does
But-
local news affect that?
Yeah, that's great. But I want to just real quick, because I think what an important, or I want to get your perspective on, is that yes, Zuckerberg, Bezos, etc., own the world, or own those
Pretty
companies.
much.
But with Elon is unique because he's a heavy participator
Right.
in the company that he's now going to own,
Right.
and he's very opinionated. Where I think
so is Dorsey.
Zuckerberg, not to the
Elon Musk is a
extent.
troll, man.
Yeah.
He trolls
you
people
think-
online.
Yeah, he does.
Do you think that'll
He
be
is a troll.
different?
I think it could be different. I think it could be problematic, right? And I think, I mean, I've already heard so many people saying, I'm going to leave Twitter. But I think it'll depend what type of safeguards they put in place. I mean, the thing is they're already selling our data, right? With Facebook
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Instagram. That already gets sold, right? And so
Absolutely.
there have been lawsuits where, you know, they were, last year, 2 years ago, testifying about data breaches, right? So
Absolutely.
it already happens. I mean, I guess I feel like we're kind of already there. I mean, obviously, Elon Musk is a little more outspoken.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if he gets into more Twitter brawls than others. But I would hope that they would put the company itself and the board, I guess you could say, would put safeguards in place to kind of prevent that from happening any further. You know what I mean?
He's
'Cause
gonna
it's
get
not
around
like
that
Hey.
board.
it's not like it doesn't already happen. I
He's
guess.
gonna
No,
get
no,
around
you're,
that
you're a
board.
good point.
know?
But
But it's going to be private now.
Yeah,
So I don't know. I don't know if
that's how
that.
you
yeah,
gonna
but
get around that
Marissa
board.
bringing in the board is the heavy hitter. Like the board's going to dictate how he
I would
moves.
hope.
Well, no, you
Well, no, he's going to be majority owner.
He's
So
the-
he
Majority
is-
owner,
no,
but I think
but you
when-
have a board that dictates the way that the
No,
company
no,
Right.
moves.
he's
No,
not
no,
going to
no.
be a part of the board.
I know.
He's
There-
taking. Oh,
there
sorry,
is
James,
the
you go ahead.
board. Yeah, you're absolute. Both of you are absolutely
Uh-huh.
right. But he's still majority owner. So I mean, where
Got it.
things will come to a vote, like he'll have majority vote.
Got it. So he could say
Based off
yes
the
or no.
shares he has, though.
Got
right?
it.
Based
All
off
right,
the shares of
cool.
the company
And
that he
I
owns.
didn't know that. I apologize.
Based
go
off the
ahead.
shares, though,
So-
right, Killer?
Absolutely.
All right.
What do you have to ask us?
Oh gosh, this is tough. I know when the tables turn, right? It's like I've been asking so many questions.
You're
I
a
don't know
professional.
shit about
Well,
y'all.
I mean, I'd love to hear. You guys are Denver natives too. You know, what are your thoughts on how Denver has evolved? That's something that I talk to my friends about all the time coming back. And yeah, I don't know. How do you guys feel about Denver
I
and
think
its evolution?
From a real estate perspective, we all love it. Like, oh, you don't?
No, I'm just looking at you.
No,
That's life flex for you. 'Cause
No.
there's a vast
Whoa,
majority.
Well, he
Oh,
doesn't even live in Denver.
No.
I live in
vast
Denver
majority of
Metro.
People who don't like the real estate market. in Denver.
Yeah, Aurora is Denver
Yeah.
Metro.
Well, and I was going to
Slight
ask you, I mean,
flex,
you
man.
said real estate, but also with real estate means the displacement of communities
Exactly.
of color, right? We look
That's
at
cool.
5 Points, we look at my
Yeah,
community,
I get it.
we look
And
at
my-
Montbello. So
my
I guess
family-
my question
Oh, go ahead.
is to you, I mean, real estate's great if you own property, but what about the people who don't or who aren't building that generational wealth?
Yeah. So fortunately, my family was able to invest in real estate. Does it still exist? No. But there's lessons learned from that. There's people that lived on the east side, 23rd. So yeah.
Lived on the east side.
Yeah, lived on the east side. And we're no longer there. These are lessons that should be taught, and you learn and you understand we can't do this again.
Right.
Sometimes life comes with a hard knock, and you got to learn from it.
But you said it's great though. You said
No.
it's great.
No. Great meaning.
If you have ownership,
if you have
in those
ownership in it,
communities,
but it's a great learning experience to say, like, hey, this didn't work out for us. What can we do differently for our families to learn more so it doesn't happen again?
But I think an interesting point there, and let's talk about gentrification, right? One of my former best friends, we used to get into a lot of our disagreements because she was an engineer and she would say gentrification is needed. And I was like, no, it's not. But I think to your point where you say, you know, we need to do better, learn from that. The thing is we need to educate our communities. They don't even know about generational wealth, right? And I had this conversations with my friends about how with many of our communities, you know, many of our communities, you know, unfortunately, we do have to start from like square A with teaching our communities about generational wealth, about real estate, about why you shouldn't sell your property, right? So I guess, you know, you say we got to learn from it, but how do we even get to the point where we can teach them? I mean, my neighborhood right now is being gentrified as we speak.
But the question you asked is, how do we feel personally about Denver? Personally,
yeah.
that was
I mean,
the
obviously
question.
we have love for
No,
it.
No, individually. And the way I heard you, Damien, is say, as you as an individual, it's been great, especially on the real estate side. That's what you said. And the
From a
pushback
capitalistic perspective,
for
yes.
for you.
Yeah.
Okay. And and the
Sure.
only pushback was that, okay, yeah, for you individually, but
That's what the question was.
a part that comes off tone deaf.
No, it doesn't. She asked me how it was
That's
for
why
me.
That's why she pushed.
That's why
No,
she
and I
pushed
get
a
it,
little
and that's
bit.
why I said
That's why she pushed
what
you a
you
little bit.
learn.
No, you started to backpedal and say,
I didn't.
And say, okay, well, let me.
Did I?
Yes, you
It
did.
felt a little back.
Well, I didn't mean to backpedal.
a little bit.
And
Cool.
and
He was
I'll
in a
accept
Deion
it.
Sanders.
And I'm just pushing because the push was, okay, but there's people in these communities that cannot afford housing here.
Sure.
So when I say it sounds a little tone deaf for you to say, and that's why I said light flex, for you to say, well, yeah, man, the real estate perspective, yeah, I'm doing well.
Yeah, and I think
So
you know,
you're
just
not?
to-
And that's
You're not?
no, but
Wait, hold on. Just to shoot Damo some bill, I think he was, you know, and that is, I don't think he meant it in that tone. I don't think he was tone deaf, but it did sound like that
And
a little
that
bit.
But
wasn't my
correction
intent.
is
But the
okay.
impact I can understand of what I could have said would be tone deaf. That wasn't. But like that's why I said we learn from our mistakes. That's what I said right after.
Got it.
Okay,
So what about you, Ko?
So he's pushing back on me.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
No.
So you are. So my parents own 2 houses in Park Hill,
Flex.
right? And however, they both still see the effects of gentrification, and how in their older ages they're seeing their friends being displaced out of the neighborhood, right? So the one thing my pops always said is he said, you know what? Black people always need to remain in Park Hill, regardless of
And he instilled that in you, right?
and he instilled that in me. But then if I had him sitting there, I don't think he would say like, yeah, man, on the real estate side, like things are great.
No, but you were brought up different than me. My grandmother had it in her will to sell her house in Southmore. One of the only black person in Southmore.
That's Southeast Denver, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She lived off a steel in Mississippi. What? And she had it in her will to sell it off to her kids. Like, that's a different way of thinking. She wasn't thinking, oh, black people are going to move. No, she just said, I want something for my kids.
But Southmore is a little bit different than like Park Hill.
No, it's not. It's property.
Okay, so I disagree with you there because I think what she asked was gentrification.
I'm
Yeah, it was
answering him, not her.
No,
But let's talk about gentrification in these areas like the west
there's no
side,
gentrification
the east
off of
side,
Mississippi and
Park
Steel.
Hill, even Montbello now. Like,
Yeah, that's different.
I think, and to
My bad.
For me personally, I think like like I moved out of Denver for a while, but then I came back and I was like, I always wanted to live in. Moved out of Denver, came back, Park Hill. I was like, I always wanted to live in Park Hill because of the community.
Right.
And I had a high paying job and it was out in Littleton. And I was like, I don't care. I'm not moving by my job. I want to be around my people.
Right.
Right. Because that's how I grew up. That's where I want to be. So I was always like, I didn't care about property value. I'm always staying in Park Hill if I live in Denver.
Where did you learn that?
What's that?
Where did you learn that?
From my parents in the community I
Hence
grew
my
up in.
point.
Wait, but learn what though? I got lost.
To stay in Park Hill.
To stay where you're from.
To stay where you're from.
Yeah.
That wasn't a part of my family values, unfortunately. That's
No,
not what we
okay.
did.
You had to learn
Yeah.
it.
You have to learn it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And like
I'm not saying
now,
that.
that's what I instill in my kids, albeit Southeast Aurora, but it's going to be a different experience.
And then to go back to gentrification, though, so the displacement of it, right, and the business opportunities that come in, right? So for me and Fairfax is a prime example for that. So if you go to Fairfax back in the day, it was like black community owned, a lot of shops that were to our liking. But if you were looking at aesthetics and just upkeep and things like that, there wasn't money put into it to make it better.
Exactly.
As soon as, white people come in, then they're afforded that opportunity to tear down things, bring their businesses in, but they don't let the people that live there have the same opportunity.
Right.
So it's like whatever the restaurant that might have been there, no, we're moving that out.
Yeah.
It's like, no, let's rebuild that and re-innovate it so that it can stay, but now it has a new appeal.
Yeah, and how do we sustain those families? I mean, back to your point, I said you have to learn it, right? And I think that's interesting because for a long time, I wanted to get out of the hood. I was just like, no, I got to leave here. I hate it here.
No, absolutely, yeah.
I can't stay here. And now I can't see myself anywhere else but there because my mom lives there. And I'm still living with her right now because she got really bad COVID. That was part of me staying here. She was ventilated, unfortunately. And so that was really scary. And so she's still on oxygen now, still recovering. So I moved
Bless
back
her
with
heart.
mom.
Yeah.
Yes, she's doing a lot better.
We're pulling for her.
But that, now I can't see myself living anywhere else, But before that, it was for so long, it was get out of the hood, leave the hood, don't live here, And
That's
now
always
I'm
the
just
mentality, right? Yeah.
But now after learning, I'm just I can't see myself anywhere else but here. You know
live
what
in
I
a
mean?
city.
Absolutely.
We live in a city. We live in a city that is top 5 most expensive places to live
It is.
in the country,
Yep.
and a city that the pay does not match the cost of living.
Exactly.
So my whole point is this: being in Park Hill, the nature of my work, I do community work, right? And I see the community around me, right? So I'm seeing people that cannot afford real estate in this city making a lot of money.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about gentrification, when we're talking about just cost of living, right? This is for me, Denver is not a place that is conducive, and we're not doing well in a place where, like granted, man, if a house was passed down to you, if your parents still live in the community, but you have a leg up, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And that's fine and dandy, right? But when you're looking outward, man, you know what I mean? You see a lot. You see people who are busting their ass, who cannot afford to live in Denver.
Yep.
And they're
Absolutely.
forced to these outside neighborhoods. You know, you got people who grew up in Westwood, who went to college, who went and got master's degrees, who's making $100,000 a year and cannot live in the neighborhood that they grew up in because they're totally priced out.
That's literally all my friends. Like all my high school friends, pretty much who grew up with me. Most of them are Latinas, you know, Mexicanas. They all have college. Most of them have college degrees. None of them could afford to live there. So all of them live in like Thornton, Aurora, like the outskirts.
Sure. Right.
And that it's just so unfortunate. You know what I mean? Because we can't, like a lot of our communities can't afford property here. But not only that, but then, you know, when they're going into certain communities like the North Side or even my area, in a family that's historically been lower income is offered $500,000, they see that and they're like, whoa,
What do
this
you
is so
do?
much money.
Yeah,
What do you
absolutely.
do?
Right?
Absolutely.
So that's where the education part comes in.
Now we're talking.
Yeah.
But that happens like in those top
That
five
happens
cities,
at the Fairfax, Jay.
right?
No, but your property tax is cheaper than affordable housing.
But-
like affordable housing, like you can get on an affordable housing program and still be paying $1,600, $1,700 a
Oh,
month.
yeah.
Absolutely.
It's insane.
But I think
I agree with that.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
There's no argument I have for that.
And that's the thing is, I mean, I love Denver. This is always going to be home. This is where my roots are. But when we look at how personally, I mean, I don't necessarily love the evolution that's happened here because unfortunately it's impacted a lot of communities of color and for the
absolutely.
worst.
So
I
would
think.
would you want to move to Little Rock, Arkansas?
Ooh, no, not Little Rock. No,
I'm just throwing out a
but
place.
I think no. I mean, I eventually
Pueblo?
I eventually do want to leave again.
You do?
Yeah.
Where would you like to go?
I mean, I lived in New
No.
York. That was my number one area. But I would probably want to move to like an LA, and that's another place where real estate's awful. But I guess I'm thinking in more in terms of opportunity, right? In my job. And
So capitalistic mindset, right?
yeah, kinda. I mean, kinda. You know, but I think too, you know, where am I going to be able to serve my communities, right? Because you know, Little Rock, Arkansas, I know it has a bigger black
I was just being facetious when I said Little Rock.
But LA, her moving to LA
I
is,
get
But I
what
think
you're
we
saying
have to
about
look at
LA.
opportunities.
but her
right?
moving to LA is more of an opportunity where Denver is home.
No, but LA in terms of her career, and I'm speaking for you, is more powerful than Denver. It's an A market media place,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
But-
we must be talking about two different things then.
yeah, I guess so. But like at the end of the day, you will be able to you'll be able to work in LA and thrive, but will you be able to afford property in LA?
Right. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess it would depend where I end up with
Sure.
career wise. But I think for me, when I even anywhere I look in terms of moves, where can I be marketable? Where could my skills?
Love it.
Where can I have more impact? Whether that's for the Black community, the Latino community,
LA.
where can I go and actually implement change? And where is that voice needed? Right. I think when we look at Denver, and as much as I love Denver, and when we even look at gentrification and like real estate, I mean, Denver is more diverse than people give us credit for if you're not from here, but
Yeah.
that isn't represented in a lot of the way the city's run, right?
Sure.
Whether that's politics, whether that's news. I mean, at the end of the day, the people who still call the shots, even again, when we look at diversity in newsrooms, like, yeah, you can have a couple POC sprinkled in, but who's calling the shots? Are all the managers white? Or do we have a couple
spitting.
POC?
You
Like,
spitting now.
so I think we have to look
Spitting.
at, I mean, yeah, like just the bigger issues. I mean, I love Denver, but Denver, in my opinion, I don't necessarily think serves a lot of communities of color.
So can
yeah.
I just throw out just one last thing? In terms of affirmations, I think I took my statement the wrong way. You will go to LA. You will thrive. You will be prosperous. And I think I like the way that I took like position on what you said. I diminished what you said, and that wasn't my intent.
No,
You're gonna be a
worries.
baller
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
for sure.
Yeah, but you were spitting right there. Like, does the media and the the way Denver is structured and what people see on the surface coming in fully represent the culture and diversity that's actually here. Because it's tough.
Think it does.
Because of gentrification, right? People of color are so spread out, right? But the one thing that has remained intact is that Latino population is still strong here. And it's visible, right?
Absolutely.
But it's like you said, in media, do we really highlight that? Are we just putting Latinx people on the TV during Latin Heritage Month?
Right.
You know
Well, and that's
what I
the
mean?
thing is in my opinion, it's kind of tokenism, right? I mean, it's tokenism to a point where, we're going to throw in these POC into these spaces. But again,
It's
it goes
like
back
sprinkles.
to intention. Are you really doing it with intention to serve that community? And I have so many friends who are Latinas who say, great that you're working here, but like your station still doesn't like speak to me. It doesn't serve me, just like it doesn't serve many communities of color, right? And so of course my friends are still out there watching Telemundo and Univision, which I give so much props to the Spanish speaking networks as well. But it's because these stations aren't necessarily speaking to our communities and what's important for them, right?
It's crazy you say that
cracks.
because it's like even if
I
you
know.
sprinkle, if you have the diversity
Right.
there's not the inclusion part, right? Of like speaking to us.
Right.
Sure.
Like you have faces there, but it's still that Eurocentric
That's a good
thought
point.
Because
process.
there are barriers, right? And so every day when you're going to pitch a story, and I might pitch something that has to do with the Black community, right, or the Latino community, there's still probably a white manager above me who gets to call the final
shots.
shot, right?
No, absolutely.
So you have to, I mean, I say this all the time, like, I think, in my opinion, a lot of these corporations are diverse and, they care about diversity and inclusion until they don't, right? Until it's enough, like, okay, we got a Latina here, she'll play that card. But once it's a little too risque or
You're right.
too overboard, it's like, oh, let's put the brakes on that.
So I don't talk about my job a lot on this show. And
What do you do? Tell
I,
us.
I lead diversity, equity, and inclusion for Intuit.
I've
and-
heard about that company.
Yeah, so TurboTax, QuickBooks.
Yes. Are you
MailChimp.
going to give me a hookup on that TurboTax? That was supposed to be free, wasn't it, for
Hey,
certain people?
No, you make so much money.
Oh my God,
Uh-huh.
it's supposed
He's
to
a
be free.
But I
he's a
got you.
capitalist. He's
Yeah.
going to
I
charge you for
know.
everything.
Yeah, I won't charge you.
Gosh, wait, did you ever see the Hassan Minhaj documentary about taxes?
No.
Hassan Minhaj, I think it is. It's really interesting, and it talks about how I'm like a doc freak, but it talks about how a lot of these companies had two URLs to get them to get people when it was free for a lot of Americans. They had two URLs, and the top search on Google would lead them to the paid version versus
Sure.
the free version just to get that money.
There-
But actually, it was supposed to be free, and they
There's a
duped
whole
people, and
bunch of
it's really
funk
interesting.
around that. Like Intuit's in the news, a whole bunch of BS. No, the bottom line is I file for my daughters and they file for free.
Oh,
Like
okay.
that's the crux.
Yeah.
Nice.
If you know what you're doing, if you click on the right link, you get it for free.
Yeah.
So I lead diversity recruiting for Intuit. And one of the things that that's not a flex. This is just like me spitting facts. One of the things that's our main focus is representation at the leadership level for all of the things that you're talking about.
Yeah.
You make strategic hires at the leadership level. People see, i.e. James, in positions that they normally wouldn't see individuals in that position. And guess what they want to do? They want to work for them.
Yeah.
And so, granted, this isn't like discriminatory by any means, but if you have the skill, guess who's going to hire you?
Yeah.
We will.
Right.
Now, kudos, Damo. Yeah,
Flex.
Yeah,
yeah,
kudos, man.
absolutely.
That's one thing about Damo, man. He's gonna reach
He
back
is.
and give his time and his influence. You know what I mean, to people of color.
But Marissa, you're absolutely right. It's like, because I did see a chart, and I'm also in the tech industry with Damo.
Hey.
So, looking at the percentages, you're right. Like,
It's off.
it's off because at the bottom level, like, it is more diverse, and it appears like, oh, when you look at it at the
Right.
surface, you're very diverse. But as you climb up the ladder, it's like, oh, there's a speck there,
Yeah.
brown there, there's a black there, and it's just far and few between.
There
So
you go.
you're absolutely right,
Yeah.
and that's
Yes.
where change is made. Right, is
Right.
near the top. So
Exactly. Who's
So-
calling
you're
the
absolutely-
shots?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So statement, and then I'll bring us home.
Okay.
You know what's so interesting that you said that, Jay, is
I say interesting shit.
no, you do, man.
I
And
do.
like
I'm flexing.
when
I
when
love it.
no, when you think about what people see, when you look at me, you don't see the normal corporate America MF,
Yeah, I do.
right? No, you don't. Yeah. Like when you see, like, he got on the phone on me.
He taking
got on the
calls. Put it
phone.
on speakerphone. Let us all hear this.
It's school
Oh,
night. School
hey,
night.
I'm on the phone.
School night.
It's okay.
It's a school night,
I
Daddy. I
know.
want to
It's
go
tough.
night night.
Tuesdays are tough, man.
Let's
This
just-
is my Sunday night, essentially.
Oh,
So,
oh, really? This is your
yeah.
Sunday night.
So tomorrow's like my Monday.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's a rough week ahead. We'll see.
So-
hopefully, pray no wildfires come out.
Yeah. So we'll just wait till he gets off the phone. Let's listen to his conversation.
Down. Speaker.
Bedtime is 9:00. Get their ass in bed.
I know.
Y'all
Gosh,
ass
I
in
know.
bed.
I was talking about
Hey,
his ear
that's
off.
good.
Why
Get up
were
all
you
the
here?
time.
No, that was
man.
good. No, so
I'm sorry.
What
I say
think-
interesting shit. Yeah.
You say, oh, so when you look at me and James, when you look at him, you may or may not see the normal corporate America motherfucker, right? And excuse my language, but one of the things that I pride myself on is if you can't see me the way that I am, whether it's my haircut or whether it's my tattoos or whether it's the way that I talk, whether it's the way I approach situations, then I'm not in the right place.
Right.
It took me 10 years in my corporate life to understand that, and I understand it now, and my leadership team respects that.
Right.
And it's not a flex like, oh, you're going to listen to me,
No, right.
but this is who Damien is.
Right.
And they attach to that.
He's
Sound very
absolutely
corporate.
right. No,
Sound
no,
very
but I mean, he's speaking truth, and I work for
He's
Slack.
He's speaking a lot of.
So I work for a company called Slack,
Oh, yeah.
and he's right, because when you're worried about those things, you can't be your best self,
Can't.
right? You can't come in there and provide solutions because at the top of your mind is clouded with like, how can I say this right? How can I not put my accent into things?
Right.
Like you're worried about the wrong things, and we
Yeah.
want you to problem solve. We want you to be your best
Mhm.
version of you.
Right.
And if you can't do that, like if you're worried about, yeah, I got tattoos and, I'm black, I wear my hair this way, I'm brown, and, I have these certain perceptions and stereotypes. If you are working like that, you got to get out of there.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. I think that when you say that and when we say that, I think that's why a lot of people are leaving the industry, right? Because the
No.
thing is when
The
we look
Great
at journalism,
Resignation.
it's evolved, right? And
It
there are
has.
other ways to do journalism. Look at TikTok, right? And when I go speak to students, I say, you're interested in journalism, start making some TikToks. You really, because that's where we're getting our news sometimes. And so
Absolutely.
I think too, if that space doesn't, in my opinion, respect you or value who you are, then find
Go
a new space.
elsewhere.
There you go.
100%.
Find a new
Absolutely.
I
space.
told
Let's go.
somebody that today. So it's interesting because a lot of what I do is I do coaching as
Yeah.
well.
I need to sit down with you.
Yeah, hey,
Give me
let's
some
let's
coaching
talk.
Tips.
But like, no, it's important, and we talk about stuff like that. If you can't bring Marissa to the job, then we got to look at things differently. So
Right.
we'll go TikTok viral.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
So one of the questions we always ask to like close it out. Did you have a good time tonight?
Oh my gosh, I had a great time. I could stay here
Cool.
all freaking night, all day, all week. Shout out to y'all.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Yeah, we could stay here all
Sorry,
night.
I talked your guys' ear off. I
No,
You've
no.
been great.
No,
You've been
this,
great.
This was your show. Like,
Absolutely. This is all about you.
Aw,
and then
thank
we
you.
always
Absolutely.
ask, like, considering the experience that you had tonight, who would you recommend that we have on the show?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. So, do you guys know Jason McBride?
Sounds
he runs
familiar.
Struggle
yes,
of Love.
yes. Struggle
of Love.
Yep.
He
I
is
heard no
great.
Struggle of Love.
He does so much for the community. We've worked on several stories together. He would be great because I think he's been at the forefront of what we're looking at, what's happening with youth violence in Denver and Aurora historically, right?
Got it.
He is just, I think, a great advocate. And I mean, this guy's working Saturdays and Sundays sometimes, going out to the community. But also Tim Hernandez. Tim, he is actually... I think he told me he's a Gen Zer, but he's a new teacher at North High School.
Okay.
He I think this is like his first year there. He graduated college, I think 2020. He's young, but this guy is smart. And when we look at education and we look at what's lacking in education, he is the perfect educator to bridge that gap.
Especially coming from North High School.
Yeah, and he actually didn't go to North. He was raised in North,
there. I'm saying
but he
teaching
teaches
there.
there. Yeah, but when we look at that area, right, and what's happened to North, and
A lot of change.
the
Extremely
North Side,
gentrified.
right? But
Extremely
he is so smart and innovative, and he is someone who I think when we look at educators, those are the educators we need when we look at DPS and who's educating our Black and brown
Love it.
kids. So he would be definitely one of my top, and then Jason with Struggle of Love. For sure.
And so even if like you're obviously going to think of people later, you're always like, oh, damn, I should have said this person.
know.
Tag them.
I will.
When we post it,
Yes,
tag it,
I
please.
will. I definitely will. I had such a great time with you guys, and I just appreciate the shared space. I appreciate everyone's knowledge and insight into all of these different issues. And honestly, I just give you guys a shout out for what you're doing. You know, putting
Thank you.
Denver on the map
Thank
and
you.
just showing all the love for our community and what we have here. I think sometimes when people think of Denver, they don't think a lot of people tell me like, oh, there's actually Black folks.
There's
I'm like,
Black people in
yeah.
Denver?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's always
absolutely.
what I get. I'm like,
Absolutely.
yeah,
There's
they've
brown
been
people in
there,
Denver?
they've existed. We really just got to give them that platform, and even the Latino community. I mean, we have to give our community, I think, you know, a place where they can share their stories and share their narratives. So thank you guys so much for
Absolutely.
doing
That's
this
what it's
and-
about. Like we
and
want to
bringing us
have,
to the
we want to
community.
tap into the Latino brown community to
Yeah.
come on the show. 'Cause
One question I do want to ask
Yeah.
you guys, and I ask a lot of my Black friends this, and I have conversations just with my friends of color in general, and we didn't get into this too much, but how can Latinos be better allies for the Black community? And that's something I try to do every single day in my job and in my workplace, I guess. But how can Latinos be better allies for the Black community?
Give me free tacos.
The free carne asada, right?
No, I know, just because I love tacos and it's Tuesday. I don't know that I have.
Tuesday.
It is Tuesday. Yeah, I don't know that I have a specific answer. I think there's a lot of things that the Black community can learn from the Latino community, in terms of togetherness and building community.
Yeah.
And you know what I think about, like what resonates with me from back in the day is like in Denver, the separation of the communities.
Yeah.
And like now what's happened is they're together.
They're coming together.
And then how do we communicate that togetherness?
Man, it's
Does that
totally-
make sense?
It does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's totally sharing that space. So one of my really good friends, man, I met him late, like you know, like I grew up with Damien and James, and Jay,
Killer.
Killer. I know we call him Killer, but we grew up together. And but Damien talks about with these divides, you know, like back in the day, Denver was a lot more segregated than it was segregated. You know what I mean? And started working for the city, and I befriended a guy named Bobby Lefebvre.
Oh yeah,
And,
Bobby's work is so great.
That's my dog, man.
Yeah, his
And
gosh,
He was here
his
on
poem-
Friday.
Yeah,
Was
yeah.
he? His
For our
poem
he
1
came
year
is
to
great.
anniversary.
Yeah, so he came to our 1 year anniversary, but I respect him so much, man, because we started out as peers, just on the work on the job, and we started hanging out, and he really gave me the tour of the North Side, right, and the whole Southwest Denver, and we created this bond by just going to lunch together, sharing space, right? And he's taking me to, man, Vietnamese, Italian, Mexican, Guatemalan, Ecuador. Like, he's taking me to all of these dope restaurants, and we created this bond over food, man. And we just became really close. And to Damien's point, it's about sharing that space, especially sharing space and understanding that we are one and the same, right?
Yep.
But being open and having safe space to clearly express our differences, right?
Yeah.
And be cool about it, right? And say, okay, here's how we differ, which is cool. How do we find common ground? And that's what I found with him. And you know, to meet a guy in my 30s, you know what I mean, and say he's my friend, hey man, it was awesome.
That's pretty dope.
That's dope.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What about you?
I think y'all summed it up perfectly. I think we need to show up for each other, right, and have that safe space where And I was talking about when I was in, Mexico, and I probably didn't describe it the best, but the similarities we have, and to be able to share those together, and yeah, being there for one another, understanding each other's culture, we can learn a lot from each other, and be able to be lockstep when we're talking about the bigger issues that affect us, the black and brown communities. Like, let's coordinate a little more. Let's work as a team. Not to say that that's not happening, but do it even more.
But Fred Hampton proved that, like, it gets so deep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but and
it's not just black and brown, but just showing up for each other.
Because when you have a coalition, the shit gets too deep.
Yeah.
One of the things that you said that I have to double down on is, like, not only the shared space, but like just talking. Like, I know shared space is like, hey, we're in this space.
No, absolutely.
But like talking and togetherness, and like it's interesting how, like, to your point, food brings us together.
Exactly.
Like, I was like, free tacos. Like,
no, absolutely.
no, but like that's a joke, but it's the truth. I don't want free tacos, but
Yeah.
like
breaking bread together.
breaking bread. You said it.
Having that
Nicely said.
conversation.
Thank you. You summed it up for me.
There you go. I'm all about it.
Absolutely.
It's all love.
Yeah. So
You're
never.
the bomb, by the way.
Oh, thank you. No,
Yeah,
thank you guys so
round
much.
of
I
applause.
honestly could stay here all day and talk to you guys all day. So invite me back for part 2.
Yeah, we
Part
will
2.
invite you back.
Marissa, thanks for stopping by and giving us your time. I know it's important to you, and we loved it. And you never stumble upon the unexpected if you stick to the familiar. So go out there and support each other, share with each other.
Yes.
This podcast.